and welcome to Ministry Monday. I'm your host, Amanda Bruce. Today on the podcast, I am pleased and honored to sit down with Kathleen Haley. Kathleen has been the Director of Membership Services for NPM for 20 years. She is one of the very few NPM staff members that has worked for all 4 NPM presidents in their time here. I am so pleased to look back at Kathleen's 20 years of service to the association with her. I get the chance to sit back and have a cup of coffee and let her share some stories from the many conventions, phone calls, emails, and all the other ways she has interacted with all of our membership for 20 years. And please let me also say that for myself personally, I will miss Kathleen tremendously and am so honored to have a place to sit down with her. And if you have any other follow-up or messages you would like to get to Kathleen, email me at ministrymonday@npm.org, and I'll make sure that she gets them. Again, that's ministrymonday@npm.org. Okay. Hi, Kathleen. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well. So I scheduled this time for us to sit down and have a little coffee talk, if you will. So I brought my mug. Did you bring a mug?
I brought my mug.
Oh, good. I did too. Now, for those of you who are listening, can you share what your mug is so people will know?
I can. It is a really big mug with a Maryland terrapin on it because I am a proud Terp. I bleed Terp red. And I thought it was really appropriate to use this mug because this mug has sat on my desk and I've used it at NPM pretty much every day that I've been employed at NPM.
So really?
It seemed like a really good thing to include in our little chat.
It's a staple. It's an office staple.
It is.
That's good. Good. I brought mine. I actually have a Tim Hortons mug. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why, but I just love this mug. It's nice and big. So,
well, that's key.
Yeah.
No, you're drinking tea or coffee, just lots of it.
Yes. When they say 1 cup, they never specify how much. So, yeah, there's our coffee of cup of coffee and tea. So,
and
go ahead.
I was going to say, perhaps somebody who's just listening will now have to turn on the video so that they can see these mugs that we cannot stop talking about.
That's correct. See, you're good. Kathleen, I didn't even prompt you to say that. You're just telling people to go to the NPM YouTube channel.
Hey, it's all part of our connection.
That's right. Okay, so Kathleen, of course, I wanted to sit down and chat with you a little bit because, at the time of this recording, you shared that you're going to be moving on to a different chapter in your life after working for NPM for 20 years.
Yeah.
You have put up with us for 20 years.
And you all have put up with me for 20 years.
Oh, that's not very hard to do. So Kathleen, when you started at NPM, what was the context? Where were you coming from? Why did you apply for the job?
Well, it's a real Kathleen story, and anybody who's heard one might be hitting pause, but I didn't even know NPM existed until I saw an ad in the newspaper, because back then that's how you found new jobs, was you looked in the newspaper, and I found this really brief, I think it had 3 lines in it, ad that said something about a Catholic music association, and they needed people to talk to the members, and that was about it. It didn't say the name of the organization. I had no idea who it was because I had never heard of it. And I remember thinking, because I had been looking for a job, I'd been at the same position for about 6 years and was ready to move on from that. I was working for another nonprofit, but I was looking and just reading every ad I could see. And I remember clearly thinking, Catholic music, talk to people. Well, I think that's my job. And the strange thing is that I didn't see the position advertised 6 months before that. If I had, I think I would have applied and I probably would have gotten it. But apparently there was a guy who was going to be the placeholder for me, and he didn't know it and I didn't know it, because right before I got this position, my dad was really, really sick, and he ended up passing away just a couple of weeks after I started at NPM. And honestly, I was able to have a lot of time with him in those months that I wouldn't have been able to have, no matter how generous the staff was about me being off. You can't be off a lot when you're in a new job. And so I was able to be with my dad in his last months, which was really special. And I was on the Metro, which is the subway in Washington, D.C. I had to run an errand, and I got on the subway going the wrong way, which is very unlike me. And I thought, well, let me just read the ads today. I didn't usually read them during a weekday. And that's when I saw it. And if I hadn't gotten on the train going the wrong way and had extra time, I probably would never have read it. And it's just, I've always thought that it was meant to be, that I was not meant to see it 6 months earlier. I was meant to see it then, when there was somebody who wasn't working out and was going to move on. And that I saw this ad and that it spoke to me. And that's how I got there. I had to call a friend who worked for a Catholic organization and say, hey, do you know anything about some Catholic music organization? And she said, well, let me see what I can find out. And so she called me back and she said, yeah, it seems to be pretty legit. So it's very sad that I didn't know about NPM. It's very, very sad, but it kind of goes along with the fact that at the time, my then parish didn't have a music director. So there wasn't anybody who was telling anybody else about NPM. So I took the job, and my dad passed away very quickly after that, and the staff just really rallied around me because my own pastor was journeying with his father who was dying, and we weren't sure he was going to be able to celebrate the funeral liturgy. And so I went to Father Virgil Funk and I said, Virgil, I don't know if my pastor is going to be able to be there. And he says, he'll make it, but I want him to be with his dad. Would you be willing to celebrate this funeral liturgy? And he said, yes, absolutely. And I said, but would you be willing to just step back if my pastor's able to be there? So would you be prepared, but step back? And he said, yep, absolutely. And then the staff was just so wonderful. I mean, Gordon Truitt prepared the worship aid. Remember, we didn't have a music director. It was just all very willy-nilly. And Paul Lagoy photocopied it, and the whole staff came to the funeral, and it was just amazing. And so when I say I was really welcomed and brought into the family, I mean, I was really brought right into the family, and we had an immediate connection. And it's pretty rare is what I'm finding. I just thought that was how everybody got their job. That was what everybody had when they got to their job and how things proceeded. But NPM's a pretty special place.
It is. And I've always had that sense of community too, just as a member, both on a local and a national level. But you're right. It's nice that it translated to a staff environment too.
It really did. It really, really did.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it was a really strange place to work physically. The building was a house that had been converted into offices, 225 Sheridan Street in Washington, D.C. And it was a little run down. It was well loved. What other, euphemisms can I use for the fact that it was in pretty bad shape? And oh my goodness, we had Circuit 13 that we joked about for a long time, because one of the circuits in the circuit board in the basement would trip all the time. And when you were working, you had to save your work early and often, because you never knew when the power was going to go off, and you were going to lose everything on your computer. Oh my goodness, it was just crazy. Circuit 13. So we were really happy when we got out of the house and got into an actual office environment.
Yeah.
And the house has been renovated and is gorgeous and beautiful and is a home now. I went through it when they had an open house, and it's just gorgeous. But back then, there were some problems. We shared, let's see, there were about 13 of us on staff, and we had 2 AOL accounts, and we were split, and half of us were on the one and half of us were on the other, and there were sub accounts. And so you could never be using email when somebody on your side was on email. So we would yell out, "Anybody on email?" We would say, "Yeah, I am, but you can have it in 3 minutes," or something like that. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. But fun to think about now. Now that we live with email on our phones
All the time.
all the time, it's crazy to think that in 2000, I was in an office and couldn't be on email except when everybody else was off. Crazy.
Things have definitely changed in the 20 years that you started NPM.
I sure have.
Yeah, definitely. This podcast wouldn't have existed, actually. I mean, so much has changed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take a minute and let's kind of transition a little bit, and let's talk about some of the NPM highlights, if you will. So of course, Kathleen, anyone who's been to an NPM convention knows you, because you are the greeter. You are the person that everyone sees and gets their information from. But whether it was from a convention or otherwise, what are some of the highlights or memories that come to mind over your 20 years?
Well, I wish I could forget one memory, which is at a convention when somebody brought me a tiara, a little plastic pink feathered tiara, because they started saying that I was, NPM's princess, and so somebody brought me a tiara, and people wanted me to wear it, and I wore it for a whole week, and boy, I was really ready for that to go away. And so there's some memories I'd like to forget, but gosh, there are a lot. One thing that comes to mind is when we were in Detroit for a convention, and the power went out in the convention center because it was out in half of the city. It wasn't just the convention center, it was half the city. And we were on Saturday, before the convention was to start on Monday, we were scrambling, trying to figure out a plan B, a plan C, which I guess was maybe good practice for when we had to change to a virtual convention this year. We had a little bit of experience with what are we going to do if we can't be in this building. It was hot. I remember how incredibly hot it was because, of course, there was no air conditioning because the power was out. And I was training the registration volunteers in the lobby of the convention center so that we could be near the windows, so that we had the sunlight coming in so that we could see each other. But that just meant it was all the hotter because we had the sunlight coming in, and it was just crazy. And about half of the power came back on before the convention started, so we were able to go ahead and do that. And then the rest of it came on by the end of the first day. I want to say it the first day. But what an amazingly, jarringly hard thing to go through, that everybody kept saying, we're going to laugh about this someday. Yeah, but not today. And now we can laugh about it because it was crazy. It was so hot. I just remember it was like my face was raining. It was so hot. It was so horrible, but that's a memory. That's a memory.
Yep.
I remember my first convention in Parsippany, New Jersey. Was a regional. We still had regional conventions then, and I didn't know where the light switches were yet. I mean, I was really still figuring out what was up, what was down. And so I got there late on Sunday night, and I was with Lisa Tarker in the bar having a martini when I said to her, you know, Lisa, I'm really not entirely sure what I'm supposed to be doing here. And she said, okay, well, let's figure that out, which is what Lisa did. She figured things out. So she grabbed a cocktail napkin and a pen, and she started thinking, okay, well, you should go to this. You should go to the Muse Ed board meeting, and you should go to the Committee for Chapters, which was then called the Council of Chapters meeting. And you're going to need to help set up the booth, and you need to go by registration. And she's telling me all these things, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do all of this? I didn't know I was supposed to do all that because it had been such a hectic time. And we just really hadn't ever gotten around to sitting down and saying, this is what you're going to do at the convention. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of great of Lisa. And she even gave me a little schedule, said, here, I'd spend 15 minutes here and then go here for 20 minutes. And that's what I did. And I sat in on the Muse Ed board meeting, the Music Educators Division. And that's where Sister Kate Hendel was leading that at that point in time. And so I introduced myself and said a little bit about how I'd gotten there and how at home I already felt, and that I was planning to stay for a while. And because there had been several membership directors in the previous year, Sister Kate turned to the person, Dennis Rabicki, who was taking minutes, and said, did you get that and put that in the minutes? She's not going anywhere. And he said, I've got it right here. So I knew right then and there that it felt like a good fit, that I was going to be here for a while. And in fact, I have been for 20 years now. And that was a really great start. It was a foreshadowing, a harbinger of what was to come, drinking in the bar.
Of course, naturally.
And then trying to fit in to a very brief convention, a lot of stuff, which is one of the challenges of an NPM convention, is that there's a plethora of good things to do, and that no one person can do it all. And that's what was so great about this year. And so I've got a really good memory of this year is, wow, people are still, as we speak, I don't know when this will air, but
Mm-hmm.
as we speak, people are still able to get to the convention platform. Mm-hmm. And that is amazing, because they would never be able to do everything at a previous convention because there just wasn't time and things conflicted. And now people can watch the same thing that's happening, as something else at their own convenience. So it was a great first convention. I met a lot of people that I'm still really good friends with right then and there at the beginning. And it's just a really warm memory.
Those are nice. And of course, conventions always bring lots of memories, and I'm sure it's funny too, by the way, that you remember the temperature for one of the conventions. I remember the heat or the cold sometimes based on the air conditioning from a lot of conventions. So there's definitely a physical experience we remember from certain.
There really is.
Yeah.
I remember missing what was supposed to be my first national convention. We were alternating regional and nationals at that point. And I'd been there for about a year, and we were having a pretty big celebration in 2001 in Washington, D.C. Virgil Funk was retiring, and so there was a lot of pomp and circumstance. And about a month before the convention, I woke up in the middle of the night in extreme pain, and at the emergency room found out that I had a tumor on my kidney. And so I needed to have surgery to have this tumor removed. And I was like, well, can't you just do a biopsy? Well, no, because of where it is, it needs to be excised. And they had me prepare for the fact that they might take the kidney because depending on how it was positioned, it might be easier to do that. And you can live with one kidney. And so a week before the convention, I was in the hospital having surgery, and I missed my first national convention. Wow. And I was so disappointed because I was going to meet all kinds of people again. But It wasn't meant to be. So my first my first national convention was 2003 in Cincinnati.
Mhm.
And it's I could tell you 20 memories from every hour of every convention, and it's really, most of them are hysterical. Some of them are kind of crazy, and some of them are, I don't know how to classify them, but yeah, they're really amazing experiences.
Mhm.
So if you are listening to this or watching this and you haven't been to an NPM convention, get thee there, because I have heard so many people say that that they met dear friends, people who became lifelong friends at an NPM convention, and it was either in a breakout room or sitting on the couch in the lobby and just chatting about, oh, really? You did that? How'd you handle that? What should I do about this? I mean, that's what an association is, people associating with each other. And NPM members are so generous with their time and their talent and their treasure. And they just want to share all that and soak it up from other people.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so as we wrap up our time together, or I should just say our recorded time together, because we're just going to keep chatting and sitting and talking. But after our recording today, my last question to you is, of course, something that we've heard already in the office several times, and it's, Kathleen's leaving. Does that mean I'm never going to see her again? Or what's next for her? They want to know what's going on. So can you give us a little bit of an idea of what your next steps are going to be?
I can, and thank you for asking. First of all, you can't get rid of me that easily. I'm a bad penny and I'll keep turning up. And my own personal NPM membership is paid through 2022. I was just online one day and I'm like, well, I might as well just do this. So I will continue to be an NPM member, and maybe I'll see everybody at a convention and I'll be out on the couch in the hallway, or maybe I'll jump in behind the registration and be volunteer. But hopefully I'll see you all again, because I love NPM, and I am leaving the staff, but I'm not leaving NPM. I am feeling called to something new, and I'm stepping out on faith just a little bit, not knowing entirely what that's going to look like, but knowing that I am being called to something new, to learn something new. I've had a lot of stuff happen in my own personal life, which you're thankful, I'm sure, that I'm not going to go off on that tangent. I've had a lot of stuff happen in my personal life in the last year or two that has me just sort of pondering, what is it that I can do? And it's very easy, and I think a lot of people will relate to this, to think, well, this is all I can do because this is all I've been doing for a long time. And it seems very clear to me in my thinking and in my praying, in my prayer life, that there's something God's calling me to do, and that I'm supposed to learn and grow in some new areas. And I have some thoughts on that. And so I can't share exactly where I'm going, that I'm going to X job, but it's all good. It's all good. And it's a very positive thing that I think it's going to, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know it's going to be okay. And I just have such a sense of peace about it that my family, my siblings think I'm nuts. Like, really? Really? You're leaving a good job? You're leaving a really good job? I am. But I will remain an NPM member. I'm a member of my local chapter. I think I'll actually maybe get to go to some of the local chapter events now, which would be really, really nice. I haven't been able to do very many of those. So I will be around, and like I said, you just can't get rid of me that easily. Well, and I want you to get rid of me. I want to be here.
And we want you here. We still want you here. And you know what? You're right. maybe we'll have a new experience with you, in that you'll be sitting next to us in the showcase. You'll be sitting next to us at Convention Eucharist, not having to run because there's a fiasco or a fire you have to go put out. So
Right.
mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I just have to tell you one more memory.
Okay.
I always had to leave the Convention Eucharist early because we needed to secure the collection,
right,
and then count it and get it, locked up to get to the bank the next day.
Yeah.
And that wonderful convention in Detroit, where we had no power for a while, there was a really great volunteer in registration who knew somebody who was a retired military officer who had his own security company, and arranged for security to take us from the locked room where we were counting the money to a car, to the hotel, to the safety deposit box, all of that. Wow. And I'll never forget that the instructions were, you're going to walk ahead of me. And we were carrying it in convention bags, all of this money in convention bags, because then we didn't look out of place. And he said, and if anything happens, just simply follow my instructions and I will blunt the attack.
Wow.
I will blunt the attack. But anyway, I did have to leave the Eucharist early because of the collection. And I was always so sad about that. So maybe I will sit through a whole Convention Eucharist, through every last verse of the closing, listen to the postlude, all of it, everything.
Good. You can now. Yeah. Well, listening, if anyone that's a pastoral minister in any way is listening to this, I am sure they validate your feeling right now internally that God is stirring something up in you. My mom always says, God sees around every corner. And right now you're feeling to go in that corner. You don't know what it is yet, but we all know from our experiences that, like you said, God's putting the Spirit in you, and you are going to find where you need to serve next.
Which is really part of how I came to NPM. Was I knew it was time to leave my previous job, and I said, God, I know I can serve you wherever I am, but I'd really like my faith to be more central to my day. So will you give me some guidance and wisdom on how to make that happen? Amen. It was a pretty short prayer, but there's a very similar feeling, like I'm going to something, just can't see around the corner. Oh, your mom is really smart.
I know. I'll tell her that you said that.
Okay.
Well, we're going to keep chatting right now, but let me raise my glass to you, my friend. Congratulations on 20 years of putting up with us.
Oh, thanks.
I speak for everyone who's listening that we will pray for you in your next steps, and we look forward to seeing you with your own name badge on. Yes.
Yay!
As with you getting your own stickers, on your name badge. Yep. And us sitting next to you at Convention Eucharist.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll see you there.
Okay.
Thanks.